Hello and welcome to episode number 55 of the Knitting Teaspoon podcast. I'm Liesbeth, your host, and this is a podcast which is all about knitting, spinning, sewing, all of the fiber crafts that I feel like basically. Although this week I feel like it's only been knitting, I'm not 100% sure. For the long-term viewers, you will notice that this is a different background than usual, and that's because I'm sitting on my couch today because of the surgery I had last week. For my usual podcast setup, I need to move around a lot of chairs and stuff in our living room, and I cannot do any heavy lifting at the moment, and I'm still taking it easy. I'm doing pretty fine, so nothing really to worry about, but just shoving a bunch of chairs around in the living room and doing all the setup for it. Well, I thought if I can manage to fetch my camera and put it up, then it will be good enough. So no lights today, so I'm sorry if the lighting quality is bad this week. But honestly, I will get back to setting up properly when I feel like it. And for now, I don't. I thought, let's just take it easy. Anyway, so let's get into what I've been doing. Well, first of all, there's an old project. I guess this is the oldest one that I can show you. There may be more projects. I'm really not sure. My mind is not as clear as it usually is. I think this is still a bit of a leftover from the narcosis, but I'm doing fine, so it's okay. So I was knitting on this pair of socks for my boyfriend when I last podcasted, and I think I was somewhere here. I put in this marker because I think that's where I was. I honestly don't exactly know where I was, so this marker is just to show you that I was on the leg already, because I'm pretty sure that I was already done the heel, but I'm not even 100% sure about that actually. Anyway, so I finished knitting this sock yesterday evening, and I cast on the second sock, which is here. And this sock has not seen as much progress as it might have had if I had, been feeling like taking this with me to the hospital. But I hadn't, because this is such a beautiful yarn, and also these needles are quite precious to me. These are Jawoll needles in the 1.75 millimeter or US 00 size, and they are 4 inches long. And they are just hard to get by in the Netherlands, and I only have one set of these, and I really don't want to lose them. And well, if you're going in for surgery, you are 100% sure that you will not be able to take care of your stuff yourself. So I thought, let's just take something that is a little bit less precious to me. Also, this yarn was quite expensive. It's House of Alum, house fingering in the Twin Peaks colorway, and this is the yarn that my boyfriend picked up from Edinburgh Yarn Festival. Or actually, he made me pick it up. I'm still awaiting his payment for the sock yarn, but he fell in love with this color and he wanted socks out of this color, so he's gonna have socks out of this color. That's basically how it works. So yeah, but he felt like, ooh, this is expensive, I need to pay for you making these socks. On the one hand, I'm really happy that he does that. On the other hand, it makes me realize that I've never ever accepted any payment for the things that I've made him so far, and I feel like I've spent quite a bit on making him the socks. Not so much for one pair yet, but no, maybe I should reconsider how I spend my money. Anyway, if I would not have been able to afford it, I wouldn't have done it. So the next thing that I was already working on last week is here. So I am also knitting my boyfriend a sweater. This is Jawoll. Superwash solid, I believe, and I think this is colorway number 5. And yeah, I'm making him a sweater, and this sweater is knit partially by hand and partially by machine. So in this case I knit the ribbing on the bottom, which is 5.5 or something over 2 inches of 2x2 rib on 1.5 millimeter needles or US 000s, and then at the blue line I transferred the work to my mother's, or actually my grandmother's, old knitting machine. So it's my grandmother's from the mother's side, and yeah, I knit this piece of fabric on it, and I took it with me to show last week on Thursday to my local knit group, and one of the ladies was pointed out that I had dropped 2 stitches down there. So yeah, that was a bit of a disaster, but I purchased a new crochet hook in the same size, so 1.5 millimeter, or I'm not sure how crochet hook sizes work, but the same thickness as a US 000 knitting needle, but then a crochet hook, to drop all the stitches all the way down to the bottom and pick them up again. And I know that it's 261 rows because my knitting machine has a row counter. Yeah, that was not that much fun, but I managed to do it, and now it's fixed. I think maybe in the first row it didn't catch the stitch, so in the first row it might be slightly tighter than it was, but all the other rows it actually knit on that spot, so it's not like super tight on that place. And I had actually dropped 2 stitches which were 1 stitch apart, so I had to go down twice and pick up all the stitches. And I guess all in all, knitting this bit of fabric, so it's I think 162 stitches wide and 260 rows, which would have taken me ages to knit by hand, but I think the knitting itself only took about maybe an hour on the knitting machine. So it's not a very smart one, you just have to move your hands. There's this holder that you have to move left to right. I'm not really sure how to explain how this knitting machine works, but it's quite intensive labor because it's quite a heavy movement. It's not smooth or anything. So yeah, you can definitely work up a sweat when you're knitting like that, which is a bit strange because I don't usually sweat when I'm knitting. Also, it was quite tedious to get all the stitches on the machine because I was knitting on the tightest possible setting, so I had to stretch out the fabric like this because the machine is very wide compared to what this fabric now looks like. But yeah, I'm quite happy with it, and it was just tedious to put on all the stitches on the machine and put them off again, and I managed to drop a few stitches along the way which I had to repair. So I feel like in general knitting on a machine is much faster than knitting by hand, but all the extra bits like picking up stitches and putting them back on the machine, they are so incredibly more complex than when you're just knitting by hand. Yeah, that took almost as much, well, I think more time actually than the actual knitting. Anyway, yeah, so I made a front panel for his sweater, and I've also made the back panel, and it's back on the regular hand knitting needles. You can see that there's a needle poking out here, and this one is actually on a bit of a short cable, so I won't stretch it out entirely, but these are just exactly the same. So once you've seen one, you've seen them both, I guess, except that on one of them I have ends coming off both sides. So I always stopped knitting when skein ran out, so this is about 3 skeins I think of yarn that's in here. I'm still on the 3rd skein for each side, so I've finished some 6 skeins or something. But if you try to knit and your yarn will run out halfway across, it's really difficult to fix that on the machine. So it makes for long ends, which I will probably use at some point to sew this thing together. But as I had already mentioned last week, or 2 weeks ago actually, this wasn't going to be wide enough for a sweater for my boyfriend because I lacked a certain number of stitches. I think I needed somewhere close to 200 stitches and I had 162. So it was 192 maybe that I needed because I cast on another 30 stitches. And I'm knitting a kind of side panel which will kind of go like under the arms like this. I'm not sure if you can see this, but I'm gonna hold it like this anyway. So that's going to be sewn in between of the front and the back bodice part. And this is entirely knit by hand, and you can see that it's garter stitch, or maybe you can't, I don't know. Lighting might be terrible here, but yeah. This is just a garter side panel, and I will need to knit a second one. There are some markers in here because I am counting the number of ridges that I have, and this one is marking that I have 100 and I need 130, I believe. So I'm getting there, but it's just slow because it's only 30 stitches every time, but it's still on very small needles, so it takes a while to get some length. But you know, it's fine. I like knitting and I'm enjoying this process. So I believe that's what I've done on the sweater for my boyfriend. And then there's one more project in terms of knitting that I've been doing, and it is my hospital socks, or actually these are Hermione's everyday socks, except that I've used my usual Liesbeth vanilla sock pattern for the general shape of it. So I believe that in the actual pattern, which I did not even read because I wasn't going to do it anyway, and you have to cast on at the cuff and knit down to the toe, but I always actually knit from the toe up. So I did the same, and I just took the stitch pattern, which I actually quite enjoyed knitting. It was quite addictive. It's a very easy texture pattern which only involves knitting and purling, so if you can do that, you can knit this sock, I guess. And yeah, I am quite happy with it, and I started this sock on the day in the hospital. So I knit this on my higher sharps on US 0s or 2mm needles. Not that this is really interesting to know at what needle size I knit this, but it's the needle that I can get at my local yarn shop. So if I were to lose it at the hospital or anything, I didn't lose anything because they can obviously take care of of your stuff. They do that all the time, but you know, just to make sure, I just didn't want to bring anything that was too precious to me. And yeah, I could replace those needles right away if I needed to. Also, I have 2 sets of the exact same needles, so even if I had lost one, there wouldn't be a problem in that sense anyway. So yeah, I knit these Hermione's everyday socks. They look a bit weird, but this is typically what they look like when I'm knitting them, because I have a front side of the sock and a back side, and then on the back side I obviously knit a heel, and then a bit after the heel I start also patterning on the back of the leg, and on the front of the leg there's patterning all over. Oops, a bit of floof. And then there's a bit of ribbing with the Genie's surprisingly stretchy bind off. And this yarn is BAERenwolle, a BAERfoot sock in the Mermaid colorway. I think that Victoria Bear, who is the dyer or was the dyer behind this yarn company. She has stopped dyeing, or at least I heard so on another podcast about a year ago, I believe. So this is actually the first hand-dyed yarn that I purchased, or at least consciously purchased, because I think in hindsight that one of the yarns that I purchased while I was in Stockholm may have been hand-dyed, but I'm not really sure. It said on the label in Swedish and I had misplaced the label quite fast, so I'm not 100% sure, but this is the first time that I purposefully bought Indian dyed yarn online from a store that obviously no longer exists. So I purchased this yarn, this skein. Here's what I have left over of the skein. Haven't weighed it yet, but yeah, I like this one, and there was the berry bomb colorway, so I purchased 2 skeins back then, and I was I was quite surprised with how they came packaged and all the nice goodies that came along with it. Not that it really matters anymore, but it was quite an interesting experiment. But this yarn has been in my stash for, I believe, 2.5, maybe 3.5 years, because I think I purchased it somewhere in October, November-ish, but I'm not really sure what year. I think it must have been 2016, so it'd be like 2.5 years that it's been in my stash. And it's been kind of burning there, like not burning, not getting damaged, but it's been burning on my conscience that it's been there. And I have tried to knit with this yarn. In the past I wanted to design some socks myself with this yarn. I had made a design with the other colorway that I purchased of BAERenwolle, but it just didn't work, and I had this yarn wound up in a ball for so long. It's been lying next to my desk for so long, and I had actually frogged a sock that I had cast on, but just wasn't happy with how the design was working out. So I decided this one is going with me to the hospital, and it was already wound up, so it was very easy to take with me. I still wanted to knit a pair of Hermione's everyday sock, because everyone and their grandmother has knit a pair of those, it seems. And yeah, I'm just incredibly late to the party. The Hermione's everyday sock, by the way, is a free pattern on Ravelry, and I believe it's by Lueder. Not really sure how to pronounce her name, but yeah. So I thought this is just a moment that I need to use it, and I'm really happy that I took it with me. I think I was already like here-ish on the first sock. I can't remember which one is the first now, because they look very similar. They're definitely not 100% matchy, but I don't think these particularly suffer from any kind of hand-dyed yarn syndrome. They definitely make a pair, but you can see that the places of some colored spots are at different places, but kind of evenly spread throughout, so I'm really happy with that. Anyway, I was already on like here on the first sock when I got out of the hospital. So I woke up after surgery and I was feeling quite okay, actually. Like, I'm not going to say that I wasn't in any pain, because I did ask for painkillers, but I'm nothing strong. It was a very mild painkiller, the ones that you can just, well, here you can get them at the supermarket or in a drugstore, or you don't need to go to a special medical place to get hold of. This is a painkiller, so yeah, very mild ones actually. But after I woke up, I was just like, can I go to the next room? Because I was in this room in the ward where people were waking up after surgery, and they probably all suffered from different things that they needed surgery for, but I saw people waking up so emotional or shivering or in a lot of pain actually, and I felt quite okay. I was actually just bored. I felt like, yeah, but you're keeping my knitting and my book. in another place, and I want to go to that place because I want to knit. So I still had this, how do you call that? Infuse? I'm not sure what you call it, but in Dutch it's called an infuse. I still had the little thing that feeds you in my arm. And I was already knitting when I got to my room. I was just bored, and my boyfriend was already waiting for me there. It was quite lucky. On the day of the surgery, well, I'm not particularly a superstitious person, I believe, but on the day of the surgery, we heard what would be my room number after the surgery, so that my boyfriend would be able to find me there. And it was number 55, and 55 is actually my favorite number. So yay, this is also episode number 55. But as soon as I heard that, I had this feeling like, oh, it's gonna be okay. And actually the surgery went great. It was much lighter actually than they expected. They expected to find some more damage in my abdomen, which they didn't. So that didn't need to be removed. So there is some actual surgery done, but not as much as they had expected actually. So they planned for surgery taking 1 hour and a quarter of an hour, so 3/4 of an hour, and it only took 3/4 of an hour, and then they could already wake me up. So yeah, I'm doing pretty much fine, but I still suffer some discomfort from it. It's not even pain really. So I'm not even taking painkillers for it anymore. So yeah. That being said, I think that's all the knitting content that I had to share with you this week. There is one more project though, and I did this before I went to hospital. And those of you who have been following me on Instagram as well, you may have seen a picture of this, because I have been trying some natural dyeing again, because for my boyfriend's birthday, which was some 2 weeks ago, I'm terrible at dates. Anyway, I gave him a bouquet of roses. First of all, because I know that he likes flowers as well. I'm not... Myself, I'm not really a romantic kind of person, so if there's one of us who's romantic, it's definitely my boyfriend. I really don't care that much about flowers or candlelight or anything. I'm just too practical for all that kind of stuff, but my boyfriend really likes it. So so I gave him a bouquet of roses, partially because I knew he liked them, but also partially because I wanted to try another to give natural dyeing with rose petals another go, and this is what it turned out like. Yes, this is great. I'm pretty sure that camera won't pick up the color exactly like it is, because I'm not using my studio lights today, and just depending a bit on natural light, and yeah, I'm just depending on natural light and the lights of my room, which aren't great because I have light there, and they are very far away from the camera, so I'm not even sure if they do anything at all to help the lighting. But yeah, it turned out great, and I'm not really sure how this happened. It may be because I was at the same time fighting with my knitting machine, which is a terrible idea. Don't walk away when you have a boiling pot on the stove. But yeah, I was first boiling the rose petals to get out the color, and it was already turning a bit brown. But then I thought, well, then it's probably gonna turn out more brown, but it turned out gray. This time I did use cream of tartar and some iron sulfate to fix the colors, and this is actually first I put in the rose petals in a hot boiling bath, and to get out the colors, but then I sifted the water to get all the rose petals themselves out of the water, and then I put the yarn or I let it cool down, because you don't want to put undyed yarn in you don't want to put undyed yarn or any yarn with wool content at least in boiling hot water. So I let it cool down and then I reheated it, and the yarn was already soaking in alum, so I used alum, iron sulfate and cream of tartar also to dye this. So I'm not sure, maybe the grey is just because of all the other contents and has nothing to do with the rose, but I like to call this burnt rose and this maybe rose ash, because first I put in this skein and it turned out quite dark greyish, and then the dye bath, it didn't look like this was taking up any more dye as it was, so I took this one out and I let it cool down, and then I reheated it with this skein in it, and this one turned out a bit of a silvery grey, and it's definitely not a natural color. I don't have a skein of undyed yarn here, but it's definitely not the same color as it was before I dyed it. Yeah, I wish I had a skein of undyed with me here. I did reskein this one, so that's why this one looks a bit neater than this one. I just haven't gotten around to it yet with this one, but so I would like to call this one rose ash, because I feel like I've burnt the rose maybe too long on the stove, but I'm not really sure. I'm just not sure what happened to make it this color, but I really love this silvery grey. It was completely unexpected, but I like grey, so it's fine. So yeah, I think that's all I have for you today. I wanted to say thank you for all your messages last week. It was really heartwarming to hear from all of you wishing me luck for the surgery. Yeah, that was, well, it's really nice to know that people think of you, so that was pretty nice. And I've been spoiled by my boyfriend. He's been taking great care of me. I can take care of myself mostly now, but there's still some things that are a bit more difficult, such as heavy lifting, stretching out to reach things that are placed high, or bending down to pick up things from the floor. That's difficult at the moment, so he's still helping me out a lot. So I also had my parents over this weekend on Sunday, which was Easter weekend, so they had a long weekend, but that meant that they could come over and help out a little as well. Not that I was a very difficult patient, I believe, but mostly so that they could cook dinner for us for a day and fetch me tea during the day, to make sure that the load wasn't going to be too heavy on my boyfriend, because after all he still had to work this week. I don't have to work for a while. I thought that I would have to go back to work after 2 weeks, but I've had contact with my company doctor, and he doesn't want me to go back to work until 3 weeks after the surgery, and then I won't have to go back to work full time as well. So those kind of things are pretty nicely arranged here in the Netherlands. They don't want you to work when you're not capable of working, so yeah. At least if you have a good doctor, there's always chances that you run into the wrong person who thinks you're healthy while you're not, or I don't know. Messy situations happen everywhere, I guess, but in general I think the healthcare system in the Netherlands is very well arranged. I don't need to worry about a thing, no medical bills or anything like that. It's all covered by insurance. Might not be if it wasn't a necessary thing. So in general we are forced to pay a certain amount. We are forced to have healthcare insurance, so we are all forced to pay for that. If your income is too low, you get some funds from, I don't know, I would say government, but I'm not really sure if that's the right word for it, to help you pay these kind of things for your healthcare insurance, and your healthcare insurance basically covers all the necessary care that you can have. Well, so I don't need to worry about getting back to work too fast. I also don't need to care about medical bills, because this is considered necessary healthcare, so I won't get a bill for this, which is very nice actually. yeah, I guess that's all that I have to share with you. So, yeah, I hope to see you again soon. And I hope to be able to set up properly again. And if not, I will podcast from the couch again. Who knows? Anyway, see you again next week, I think. Bye!